Good day everyone, I'm Marian Uy, and in this video, I'm going to discuss about hemodialysis, specifically the flow of blood from the patient to the dialyzer and the flow of blood from the dialyzer back to the patient. Now, dialysis is done to patients with renal diseases, with renal failure, or kidney diseases, in which their kidneys are no longer functioning properly or inadequately functioning, which means their kidneys can no longer excrete the waste products or waste materials that are needed to be excreted out or to be taken out from the body. What are these waste materials? Example, urea, creatinine, and other electrolytes, as well as excess fluid. Because normally when patients is suffering from kidney diseases, they are having a hard time or difficulty passing out urine. So fluid excess or excess fluid in the body is a common problem. Now, there are two types of dialysis. We have hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis. Hemodialysis is a type of dialysis using an artificial kidney to perform the function of a healthy kidney. And that artificial kidney is what we call the dialyzer. So the blood from the patient is taken out through the collection tube. It will travel through the collection tube to the dialyzer to be filtered out. Once it is purified, it will travel again to the collection tube, to the other second collection tube, back to the patient for circulation. Then in peritoneal dialysis, however, on the other hand, is using the peritoneum in the abdomen as the semi-permeable membrane that will filter out the toxins from the blood. In this video, we're going to focus more on hemodialysis. So, how does hemodialysis work? Before the patient will undergo hemodialysis, the doctor will actually first perform or prepare a vascular access site. We have three vascular access sites. We have central venous catheter or central venous access line, in which a Y-port catheter is inserted in the internal jugular vein of the patient. This is normally intended. This is intended for immediate or emergency dialysis. We also have AV fistula. This is most preferred site or the standard in hemodialysis. A surgical connection is made between the artery and the vein. So this. So surgical connection is made between the artery and the vein, and this connection results in increased blood flow rate in the vein, which enlarge and strengthens the vein. And right after this, once the AV fistula surgery is done, once it is completed, we normally need to wait around for several weeks or months for it to heal and then mature. Once it is healed and mature, that's the time we can use the AV fistula to insert, or that is ready now for cannulation and for hemodialysis. Next is, so this is the example of a healed or matured AV fistula. Next we have is AV graft or arteriovenous graft. This is actually just the same with AV fistula. The only difference is that there is a need to use this synthetic tube to connect the other end to the artery and the other end to the vein. Okay, so once let us say, for example, we're going to use the AV fistula since it is the most preferred site. So once it is done, the nurse once it is healed, the nurse will insert two needles. One needle is for the passage of the blood from the patient to the dialyzer, and one needle with the collection tube, of course, will be the passage of blood from the dialyzer back to the patient. So the arterial blood from the patient enters the dialyzer through the collection tube and then will travel to the dialyzer. Again, from the arterial blood from the patient enters the dialyzer through a collection tube that is with the help of the blood pump. The blood pump helps to push the blood into the dialyzer. Once the blood is in the dialyzer will now filter the blood with the help of a dialysate or a special dialysis fluid, which helps cleanse the blood in the dialyzer continuously. So the dialysate is continuously introduced here, and then it is continuously drained here as well once it is already used. Now, with the process of diffusion, once the blood enters the dialyzer, this is the example, this is the dialyzer. Once the blood enters the dialyzer, the wall of the dialyzer is a semi-permeable membrane. This is a semi-permeable membrane. This is the wall of the dialyzer. A semi-permeable membrane that contains small pores that only allows small particles such as the toxins, such as urea, creatinine, and water molecules to enter that semi-permeable membrane with lower concentration. So remember, we have higher concentration here, the blood flowing from the collection tube down to the dialyzer. So these dark spots that you see here, example, those are the urea, creatinine, sodium, potassium. Those are the toxins that will flow or pass through this semi-permeable membrane that only allows small particles to pass through it. So the big proteins or larger molecules like proteins and blood cells won't pass through this semi-permeable membrane. So it will travel through the dialysate. It will be filtered out using the hollow fibers of the dialyzer, and then it will be purified back to the second collection tube, down to the second needle, then to the vein of the patient, then back to the circulation of the patient, So this process here, the movement of the molecule of the toxins like urea, creatinine, sodium, potassium, and other electrolytes, this movement is called diffusion. So the movement from higher concentration to lower concentration. Also under hemodialysis, the movement of excess fluid from the higher pressure to lower pressure to remove excess fluid, that is called ultrafiltration. That is called the process of ultrafiltration. So in hemodialysis, two things are happening. We have diffusion and ultrafiltration. Now, in peritoneal dialysis, the peritoneum membrane serves as the semi-permeable membrane to separate or to filter out the blood, to filter out the toxins such as urea, creatinine, and other electrolytes from the blood. And that movement is called osmosis. How? Normally, the dialysis fluid that will be introduced into the peritoneal cavity of the patient under peritoneal dialysis is with added sugar, or they will add sugar into the dialysis fluid. So the sugar are large molecules, right? So it will not pass through to the peritoneum membrane. So tendency, there will be higher concentration now on the dialysis fluid. So if there is excess water in the excess fluid in the patient, the fluid will now flow from lower concentration to higher concentration to balance it out. So that process is called osmosis. So again, going back to hemodialysis, just a recap. First, what will happen? First, we need to secure an access site, or in this case, this is AV fistula. So it needs to heal first, and before cannulation, there needs to be a thrill, and then arterial blood will now travel from the patient to the collection tube by the use of the blood pump that pushes blood into the dialyzer. Once it reaches the dialyzer, the filtration will happen through the hollow fibers inside the dialyzer, with also the help of the dialysate fluid that flows here. that continuously flows here to continuously clean the blood inside the dialyzer. And with diffusion, with the process of diffusion, the molecules, small molecules, the toxins, will travel through the small pores of the walls of the dialyzer that serves as a semi-permeable membrane. It only allows the toxins, water molecules, to pass through it through the process of diffusion and ultrafiltration in the case of water molecules. Then, once the blood or the large particles and the blood cells and the proteins will not pass through the semi-permeable membrane because they are large molecules. So it will just pass through the hollow membrane. So it is now purified. Once it is purified, it will now travel to the collection tube, second collection tube, then travel to the vein of the patient, then back to the circulation of the patient, and then repeats the process. That's it for hemodialysis. I hope everything is clear. Thank you.